Ever find yourself looking at a piece of art and it like totally changes how you think about things, especially like big complicated things like our justice system?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of what we're diving into today. This artist, Cheryl Rowland, has this exhibit. It's called Processing Systems,
Mm.
Numbers by Cheryl Rowland. It's up right now at Duke University's Nasher Museum. And get this, it's this whole collab. Not just the artists in the museum, but also Duke's Innovation Collab, Annie, their social practice lab.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like art meets tech meets, actually making a difference, all in one place.
interesting.
So, okay, picture this. You walk in, and there are these huge, like, portraits, but instead of faces, it's all these intricate patterns, almost like Sudoku puzzles.
Hmm.
And here's the thing, each one of those is actually based on a real person's correctional identification number.
Mm.
Someone who was wrongly convicted here in North Carolina, served time, and then later was exonerated.
Powerful.
Right. Like, talk about a way to make you see the people behind the numbers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, the way he made these is fascinating. He used a CNC machine, like a computer-controlled router. They usually use those for industrial design, mass-producing things. It makes you think about the precision, the scale.
And how permanent it is.
Exactly. And how that contrasts with how often the stories of people caught up in the justice system are overlooked, almost like they're disposable.
It makes you stop and pay attention, that's for sure. And then there's Cheryl Rowland himself. His work is so informed by his own experiences, being wrongfully incarcerated.
Yeah.
You might have even heard of the Jumpsuit Project, where he wears an orange jumpsuit just out in public to get people talking about the justice system and, well, how it doesn't always work.
Yeah, making people confront those hard truths. It's not enough to just say, oh, yeah, that's bad. It's about really getting people to think about it, talk about it.
Engage with it.
Exactly.
And this whole social justice thing, it's not just some abstract idea for Rowland. A lot of his work really digs into identity, especially, well, you could say within the world of prisons, courts, all those policies.
Mm-hmm.
The whole system, really, that deals with people who are accused of crimes or convicted of crimes.
The carceral system.
Right, exactly. And speaking of systems, we got to talk about how this whole exhibit came together. So the Social Practice Lab at Duke, they call it SPL for short, they got this big grant from the Mellon Foundation back in 2021.
Oh, yeah, I think I read about that.
Yeah, and it was specifically to use art to, make a difference in these social issues.
Wow.
So you've got the SPL with their whole thing being art and social impact, and then you've got the Innovation Collab, which is all about like cutting-edge technology. And they teamed up to support Rowland and give him access to all these resources he might not have had otherwise. It's really remarkable. And boy, did he ever use those resources. There's this one series he did, 168.8000, and originally these were big steel sculptures. And get this, they were filled with Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, and with the collab's help, he actually recreated them using like medical-grade 3D printing.
Wow.
Yeah, the detail is incredible and the colors are so vibrant. Really amazing stuff.
It makes you think, though. The medical technology, you usually think about healing, right? Fixing what's broken. But putting that together with images of prisons, which, let's face it, haven't always been great at, actually rehabilitating people.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what he's saying.
Right. Like, is he drawing a connection between, like, the possibility of rehabilitation and the often harsh reality of being locked up?
Yeah, exactly. And then the Kool-Aid, what's that all about? What does that represent? Especially for him with his own experiences and within this whole bigger conversation about the justice system.
It's really interesting to think about. And, speaking of different perspectives, there's this whole other layer to this exhibit that we can't forget about. So, get this, right? Alongside his own exhibit, Rowland curated another one at the Nasher. It's called Seeing from the Block, Observing the Justice System Through the Collection of the Nasher Museum.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So instead of making new pieces, he took stuff already in the museum's collection and, like, arranged it, presented it through this lens of, prison, justice, that whole thing.
Huh. That's pretty cool. It makes you rethink how you see even familiar art, like he's putting it in this whole new context, making us think about how these systems, even if we don't realize it, they shape how we see the world, even art.
Totally. It's like he's saying, just look again, But look at it like you've lived this experience, like you were the one behind bars. What do you see then?
Powerful. It makes you think about those who don't have a voice, who get forgotten or pushed aside. And it reminds you, these systems that are supposed to be there to protect us, sometimes they do the opposite.
It's about Like stepping outside your own little bubble.
Exactly. And this is where that evolution of the 168.800 series is so powerful, don't you think? That use of the medical technology, the Kool-Aid, it all comes together in this really impactful way.
For sure. And I keep thinking about the co-lab, the social practice lab.
Yeah.
And they gave him this platform and the tools to really make a statement. Imagine if more artists had that kind of support, you know?
It makes you wonder what kind of change we could see, right? And not just in the art world, but like everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like what we were saying, art can be this spark, right? It gets people talking, thinking differently. It's not about having all the answers. It's about asking the hard questions.
Sometimes you need to be a little uncomfortable, you know, to really make a change.
Absolutely. When you're challenged, when you have to confront something difficult, that's when you can really start to grow. And Roland's work definitely does that. But it's not all like doom and gloom, right? There's this element of, I don't know, hopefulness to it too, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you're right. Like those Kool-Aid sculptures, for example. It's kind of playful, right? On the surface, at least. But then you think about it, and it's like this reminder of childhood, something sweet and good in the middle of all this darkness.
Exactly. It's about finding those moments of light, even in the hard places. Even when it feels like the system or whatever is trying to grind you down, that human spirit, it's still there.
And it all comes back to those portraits, right?
Yeah.
Those numbers. Those weren't random. Each one was a real person. Someone who was
Yeah.
told, essentially, you're just a number now.
It's dehumanizing,
Yeah.
that's what the system does. But Roland's taking it back. He's making something beautiful, something to think about out of those numbers. He's giving them their humanity back.
He's saying, hey, this person, this number, they had a whole life.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's more than just being locked up. That experience touches everything.
Yeah, and it makes you think about the bigger picture, right? How did we get here? What's broken that leads to these wrongful convictions? It's not about pointing fingers, it's about understanding the whole thing, the whole system, and how it affects real people.
Sometimes I think it's easy to get caught up in all the headlines, you know, the numbers, the laws, all that.
Yeah,
And we forget there are actual human beings at the heart of it.
exactly. It's easy to distance ourselves, but Roland's work, it brings it right back to that. Every single person in prison, they have a story. Their life didn't just start when they walked in that cell.
It makes you think about how we judge people, too, like
Yeah.
those assumptions we all have.
Absolutely. And this is what art can do, right? You can read about the stuff, but when you experience it, like with this exhibit, it hits you differently.
It gets under your skin.
It's visceral, yeah.
Yeah.
It bypasses all that, well, I think this, I think that, and it goes right to your gut. And that's where empathy starts. That's where change is possible.
So as we're wrapping up here, thinking about Roland, this exhibit, what would you say, like, what's the main thing you hope people walk away with?
I think it's that idea of looking closer, seeing the human being, even when, especially when, it's hard. We all have those systems we live in, right?
Yeah.
But we can question them, we can push for better.
You don't have to accept things the way they are.
Exactly. And art like this, it reminds us of that.
It's that spark, right?
Yeah.
The thing that gets you thinking, what if? And who knows, maybe it makes you want to go on your own deep dive, do a little exploring.
That's what we're here for, to get the conversation started.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks for diving in with us.